I'm Jordan, and this is Knowledge of Living. Since this video is going to be a little bit lengthy, I put a sidebar over here so you can actually skip to any point in the video that you're interested in. First, I'm going to be talking about the science behind motivation and productivity. What goes on in our brain when we're being productive? What chemicals and signals are released? This will roll into how to replicate these chemicals and signals, allowing you to trick your brain into being productive. What processes can you do in order to control your productivity? Lastly, I'll be talking about the limitations of this method. Although very small, I feel it's necessary to talk about them. So let's get started. If someone offered you a chocolate bar to clean elephant poop for 5 days, would you do it? Of course not. However, if someone offered you 10 chocolate bars to wash a few dishes, would you do it? Probably, if you like chocolate. This process comes pretty natural to us, weighing the reward of a task and deciding if that task is worth the reward. And we do this all the time at a conscious level. But our unconscious mind plays those same reward games with our brain. If we complete a task that needs to be done, our brain is rewarded with dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain that is released to induce what we call pleasure. You know that feeling of accomplishment that you get when you complete a big task and it's finally out of the way? That feeling is due largely to dopamine. Dopamine plays various roles in the brain. However, neuroscientists have come to believe that its primary role is actually to motivate us and reward us for different tasks. Now, we already know that dopamine rewards us, but what do I mean by it motivates us too? Well, dopamine is released in smaller amounts before the task is actually complete. The dopamine will actually motivate us to start that first task. Then once that task is done, we'll get rewarded with more dopamine. And then that dopamine will motivate us to start another task. And this just becomes a cycle. So as it turns out, motivation and productivity are actually very closely linked. And this will bring us to the second section. How do we get motivated to be productive? Well, there's actually quite a few ways. Some of them are obvious and some are not so obvious. But if you combine all of these methods together, you'll get the best results. I'll go over the obvious ones first. Eat healthier, sleep more, and don't do drugs. Pretty obvious. Now, according to the science of motivation, once we get started, we'll be rewarded with dopamine, and this will just become a cycle and we can keep going up. But how do we get motivated in the first place? I'll run you through a simple example. Basically, my day. You wake up and you know you have a lot to do. You might have a big project deadline tomorrow. You might need to redo your resume and apply to jobs. You might have a PhD thesis to write. Whatever it might be for you, it seems overwhelming and you just don't want to start on it. You just want to lay in bed and read Twitter all day. Right now, your dopamine levels are quite low. You're not being productive. You're not doing any sort of task, so you're not being rewarded. Now here's the trick that you can play on your brain. Don't think of that big task you need to do today. Think of a really tiny, simple task that you need to do. For me, it was unloading my dishwasher. A very simple, low-energy task that doesn't require a lot of thinking. But it was a task that needed to be done nonetheless. Although small, my brain rewarded me with a trickle of dopamine. I immediately looked at the floor and realized, I need to vacuum. So I rolled on to the next task and was fed more and more dopamine. This task led to another one and another one and another one. After a few minutes, I had a nice clean apartment and motivation to start that really gross long lab report that's due tomorrow. But about a quarter of the way through the lab report, I got bored and tired and wanted to do something else. So how do you stick with a long task once you've finally started? Well, you need to constantly be rewarded in order to keep your dopamine levels high. This can be done by breaking your seemingly long task into several different smaller sections. Each of these sections should only take you about 25 to 30 minutes to complete. Once you finish a section, take about a 5-minute break and let the dopamine flow. After about 5 or so minutes, you'll find yourself ready to jump back in. And you can use this method for just about anything. Studying, homework, your job, exercise, anything that requires motivation, this will work. The world is truly your oyster. Now, this method does have a few limitations. First, you can't keep going non-stop. Your brain will eventually run out of dopamine to give you, and you'll just get what lots of people call burnt out. The brain will create more dopamine gradually, mostly while you sleep. This is why after a 90-minute power nap you feel rejuvenated and ready to go. However, you should be slightly weary of naps. Naps can easily throw off your circadian rhythm and make your hormones and chemicals like dopamine in your brain go completely crazy. If you do want to take naps, make it a daily scheduled thing. Take naps at the same time every day. The best way to be motivated and productive is to just be natural. Sleep normally, eat healthy, and start your tasks small. Let the brain's reward system guide you through tough tasks by breaking them up into sections. Using this method, there's nothing you can't do. Thanks for watching this video, and if you liked it, please thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe here to see all my future videos, and if you have any questions, just leave a comment and I'll be happy to answer them. I'll see you all next week.